Moving forward, these are some of the tools which are used with ethical hacking. So we have listed out many of the tools here. Some of the important tools here are this one, Nmap. Nmap here stands for Network Mapper. It is an open source tool that is used widely for network discovery and security auditing. Nmap was originally designed to scan large networks, but now it can also work for a single host. And this is a very good tool for you to figure out what kind of services are available, what kind of ports are open, what kind of services are being managed by the computer, and all those kind of things you can easily do with the Nmap. The second tool, which is a very good one with the ethical hacker, is Metasploit. Metasploit is one of the most powerful exploiting tools. This tool is available from a company which is known as Rapid7, and you can see that they have two versions. One is commercial and one is free. You can easily work with the free one, which is available in the command line. This can also be used with the GUI, and Metasploit can perform basic penetration testing and also spot some kind of checks and exploitability for vulnerabilities. It can be used to discover the network or import scan data. It can also browse exploit modules, run individual exploit on host, and different other things. Currently, this Metasploit is hosting almost 2000 plus vulnerabilities, known vulnerabilities throughout the world. So if you are using Metasploit, you can easily scan for those 2000 plus known vulnerabilities. Another important tool which as an ethical hacker you will be working with is known as Burpsuit. Burpsuit is very similar to Wireshark if you have previously seen that. Burpsuit is mainly used for tracking and tracing your request and responses between the servers and the client. And this is a very popular platform that is widely used for performing security testing of web applications. So whenever you will have web applications, you might be working with either the Burpsuit or the Wireshark. And this tool itself has a complete, you can say, complete collection of multiple tools which you can use for the entire testing process. It can be used for initial mapping, analysis of the application, attack surveys, and finding and exploiting security vulnerabilities. And it's very easy to use, it's very easy to configure, and you will actually enjoy working with the Burpsuit. These are some other tools which you can also use. Another one is known as a SQL Map. SQL Map is also a very good tool which is mainly used for the databases, and this is used for exploiting database vulnerabilities. And this one is used for scanning all the databases and seeing what kind of SQL vulnerabilities you might face with the database. It's a very good tool if you have web applications, and there you can easily use this kind of tool to scan across the various vulnerabilities with the database. Another one which is a good one is EtherCap. EtherCap is the full form for this is actually Ethernet capture, and this is a network security tool which acts as a man in the middle. So whatever you are trying to send, this tool will actually help in sniffing off the live connections and also see the content filtering on the fly and do some kind of interesting tricks with the content. So you will learn these once you go with the complete ethical hacking course and learn more about ethical hacking and the processes. But these are some of the tools which are very prominent and used very heavily under the ethical hacking domain. Now coming to the process of ethical hacking. Now this is a very good process, and although you can see that there are some hard words reported here, but just let's try to reduce this process. I will just open a notepad here, help you analyze the whole thing. All right, so ethical hacking, as I told you, ethical hacking is just similar to how the normal hackers work, but this is legal because you have the permissions of the businesses. So another analogy for ethical hacking or hacking is basically how you will rob a bank. That's one of a very good analogy for just going through the process of ethical hacking. And you guys might be currently watching the season 4 for Money Heist, so it will be a very good to just give you the brief points on how to handle that kind of thing. So the first thing, how a normal bank robbery takes place. Just behave like a robber right now. Just behave like the person who is trying to attack the bank, and what are the different steps you might take to attack the bank. So the first step for you is related to information gathering. So whenever you are robbing a bank, not that you are going to actually do that, but just think of it that whenever you are going to rob a bank, then the first step is information gathering. So what is information gathering for you? That you are going to study the different timings for the bank. You will notice how the security is being maintained, how the different cameras are working inside the bank, how the people of the security are interchanging between each other, what are the different officials who are working in the bank, how big is the bank, how deep is the bank, how many vaults does the bank have, what kind of assets does the bank store, whether the bank has gold, whether the bank has cash, whether the bank has bonds. So you are going to do complete information gathering to start off the process for this. The second step, you will go into scanning. Scanning is mainly related to that you are going to scan across that now what kind of services does the bank is using. These services could be related to that kind of like a cash registry is coming into the refill the ATM is coming into the bank to refill the ATMs at this much time. It could be related to that the security guards are handling what kind of guns. It could be related to what kind of softwares are running behind the hardware which is used behind the bank. So all those things you are going to scan across and see what is going to happen with the process. Then once you have gathered the information and done the scanning, the third step is going to be gaining the access. Gaining the access would be now how you are going to enter in the bank, how you are going to perform the different activities with the bank. So you need to gain the access. If you are behaving like a robber, you need to have the access of the vault. Like in the series, the Money Heist, you have to have the access where you are going to perform and do multiple stuff with that. Once you have gained the access, the next step is maintaining the access. Maintaining the access is required because you need to do something with the assets. Again, with very similar to how the series we have the Money Heist, you need to maintain the access to make sure that the gold is converted into some kind of different format. So maintaining the access to make sure that you are able to exploit the assets which are present within the bank. And finally, you are going into clearing tracks. So once you have done the robbery, your last step is that you are going to clear your tracks and make sure that nobody is going to notice you and nobody is able to figure out how you have exited the bank. Now these steps, if you just link these steps with the process of ethical hacking, the process is actually pretty much the same. The first step is mainly your information gathering for hacking also. So information gathering under hacking is mainly related to studying the business. You will study about the business. You will try to see what are their IP addresses. You try to just Google them, what business operations are. You try to see on who is lookup. Who is lookup is a very good tool which is used to see the IP addresses of the businesses. So who is lookup, this one. So just an online tool which you can go across and see different IP addresses of the businesses, what domain is running on which IP address. So all those kind of things you will try to figure out with information gathering here. The second step, scanning, you will go into scanning the services. Once you have gathered the information, you will see what kind of ports, what kind of different things your business is using. Supposedly they are using a login page, or they are using other services like FTP, or they are using SSH or PostgreSQL, MySQL. What kind of services are being used behind the process? Once you have done the scanning, you will also figure out what kind of services are vulnerable, whether their login page is vulnerable to SQL injection. Either I can run a cross-site scripting, or on the network end I can see whether they are using some kind of vulnerable security threats, or I can do a brute force attack on top of them. So all those process will be covering under scanning. Then these two steps, information gathering and scanning, you might have again seen in the movies and these are the major steps. Gaining the access, maintaining the access, that's just a one-day thing, because the robbers are going to enter, do their part, and then they have to clear out everything. But the major step, which actually takes days, is information gathering and scanning. And same is with the hacking process. That information gathering and scanning is the major process. You need to spend your time on the gathering and scanning part. You need to figure out what are the different services, what are the different things which are being used here. Once you have done that, you are going to gain the access. Gaining access is again related to that you are going to enter into the system. You have seen that these are the vulnerabilities present, these are the different exploitations present. Now you are going to use those exploitations to gain the access of the system. Once you have gained the access, under big organizations, it's going to be that they have their security teams or some kind of security procedures or protocols in place who will try to remove you from the system. So you have to maintain the access, that they are not able to remove you from the system, because now you want to do some kind of exploitation with the system. And once you have done the exploitations, once you have carried out the hack, the last step is again clearing tracks. So you need to make sure that nobody is able to monitor your IP address or see from where you have entered and how you have exited from the system. And under ethical hacking, after this, you will have one more step which will be related to reporting. So you will just report back to the organization that these are the vulnerabilities which you have, and that's how I have exploited these vulnerabilities, and these are some of the guidelines on how you are going to protect your system from the vulnerabilities. So that's just a basic outlook of how a complete hacking process works, and it's very similar to the real world analogy, and you have to behave like that. You have to do the reconnaissance, which is information gathering, go to scanning, gaining the access, go to maintaining the access, then clearing the tracks, and finally doing the reporting for the whole thing. After this, these are just the basic explanations of these points about different steps which I just discussed, how these are being carried out. So again, the information gathering is about that you are going to monitor and gather all the information about the software or the business, and then you go to the scanning part, where you are going to do the port scanning, the vulnerability scanning or network mapping. Then you go to the gaining access, where you will actually exploit the system. Then maintaining the access, which will be just keeping the system under your control. Finally clearing the tracks, where nobody is able to track you, and then you clear off with the reporting. So that's the whole process of. So after studying the process, let's just kick this process in action. Let's show you a quick demonstration on how this whole process works. So we will have a small example here. So what we are going to do, we are going to scan a business and find out the different servers, then scan the servers for the open ports, and then finally we are going to exploit the server using a tool which is known as Hydra. So let me just open that. Here I'm using VirtualBox. So I'm going to use a Kali client. So I'm going to use a Kali client, and this is the server I'm going to hack across. So this is just a normal server which I have, and this is the Kali client which I'm going to use. Why I'm using Kali? Kali is a very good tool for ethical hackers, because that has pre-installed tool sets and softwares which you require to run the whole process. So this is just a demonstration example on how the things are carried out. So the server is just starting up. Let me open the Kali client. So very basic server which is running at my end. So the first step, as you have seen already with this one, the first step for you is reconnaissance, which is mainly related to information gathering. So this is going to be that you are going to study about the business. Let's say you are attacking Microsoft.com. You're going to study about what is the IP address of Microsoft.com, what are the different things that Microsoft.com runs, what are the different services the Microsoft.com runs, what are again the different aspects of that business. So only those things we are going to figure out with reconnaissance, and this is more of like information gathering. So this step is not available under Kali Linux right now, because this is a manual step. So you will be going to Whois Lookup and just trying to search across the different IP. So if I go to this Whois Lookup, and let's say if I'm attacking Microsoft.com, so I'm going to just figure out what are the IP addresses for the same, search across, and this will give me a lot of information. So it is giving me the registry, and all these different informations are available for the same. What are the name servers, what are the URL configurations, and everything is coming to me. So I can figure out most of the details just by searching across the internet for a business. So the first step that a business approaches you and business tells you that you have to carry out ethical hacking for us on our servers. So the first step for you is to just read across who is databases, search across Google what the business is about, figure out how the business is working. Once you have done this, once you have figured out, so let's go to over this software. So let's say for our example right now, just for the demonstration, let's say that in information gathering, in the first step, I figured out that the business which I'm trying to attack is running on this IP range. So 192.168.56.024. So this is the IP range for the business which is running here, and I'm not sure what kind of different servers are under the IP, but I am just able to locate the IP range which is present here. So as a ethical hacker, what I'm going to do here, first I'm going to just go to the terminal. Under terminal, I have a very basic tool which is known as NetDiscover. What is NetDiscover? NetDiscover is used for seeing the network. So if I pass a IP range to the NetDiscover, this will give me what kind of different machines are running under this IP range. So just by information gathering, I'm able to figure out that this is the IP range. So I'm going to run this 192.168.56.0 and then pass the range for 24, just the IP range, trying to see what kind of different machines are working under this. So let's just pass -r. So that's a recursive call to make sure that it's going to scan everything. So now it's scanning everything, and you notice here that it's giving me some of the IPs here. It's just giving me that this IP is available, this IP is available, and this IP is available, and none other IPs are being provided to me. So I'm able to see that these are the 3 machines which are working under this business. So let's try to do something with this machine. Let's try to see what is happening on this machine. So let's just exit from NetDiscover. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to use another tool here which is known as Nmap. Nmap, what it stands for, this is used for scanning the different things within a server which we have. So this will help me to scan across whether what operating system the server is using, what kind of different services the server is appointing. So I'm going to use Nmap to scan across this server. So I have Nmap. I'm going to do a stealth scan. So what is a stealth scan under Nmap? What normally happens that how the TCP works. TCP normally works in the process. I'm going to just give you a very generalized overview of TCP, how the TCP works in a normal process, that client says to the server that I want to talk. Then server replies that let's talk. And then client replies let's talk. So this is the generalized overview of TCP connection. This is known as a synchronized message, SYN. This is known as an acknowledgement message, ACK. This is also known as an acknowledgement message, which is from the client. So let's just give it as ACK +1. So this is how a TCP connection works. But what is a stealth scan? Instead of doing this TCP connection with the server, what Nmap tool is going to do, Nmap tool is going to run a stealth mode. So this is known as SS mode. And how the whole communication is going to be carried out, the first step is going to be the same, that client says to the server that I want to talk, a synchronized message. Server replies that let's talk, acknowledgement message. Then here client replies I don't want to talk. That's the stealth scan. What has happened with the stealth scan? This TCP connection, whenever I'm going to carry out a TCP connection using Nmap, so what will happen, this machine, the Kali machine, the IP address of this machine will be logged under the firewall. So any network administrator or any person who is working with the organization, he can come and see that, okay, now this is the IP address who is trying to scan us. So somebody is trying to hack us. So this kind of communication is always logged under the firewall system. But when we do a stealth scan, what has happened under stealth scan, that we have figured out whether the server is up or not, and also we have made sure that the firewall is not able to log in the information. So some of the old firewalls, what they normally do, they only log this kind of connection, they never logs in this kind of connection. So as an ethical hacker, I'm going to use this kind of connection because I want to make sure that nobody is able to track me. So if I'm trying to communicate or connect with the server, then the server firewall is not able to log in what is happening with the system. So that's why I'm using a stealth scan here. So then after this, I'm going to pass -p-. This is mainly related to that now scan every port which is available on top of this machine. So these are going to be the TCP ports because we are creating a TCP connection. Finally, I'm going to give the IP address of the machine, which is 192.168.56.103. So let's just do a stealth scan on all the ports on this IP address because I'm at this business network. So let's try to see what is happening with this server. So this is a stealth scan which has happened, and the older version of firewalls won't be able to actually log in what this Nmap is doing. The newer version of firewalls, some of the firewalls are able to log in, but there are different versions or different flags which you can pass with Nmap, which will make sure that they are not able to log in. So just by a normal scan, here I'm able to see that this server has these many ports, all these ports which are open right now. So you know that a computer machine normally has lot many ports, but this server has these many ports which are open right now, and all these ports are service. So you see, just by this tool Nmap, I'm trying to figure out all the information. So I'm trying to see what is the port, what is the state of the port, and what is the service currently working on the port. So I'm able to see that these are the ports open. There is a FTP port for file transfer. There is a SSH port where the person can log in. You might have seen under Amazon Cloud or Google Cloud that you use SSH to log in. There is a Telnet port, which is again used for login. There is a SMTP port, which is used for email transfer. Then there are other ports available inside the system. Although I've figured out these ports currently, all these ports I'm able to see, the thing is that I'm not sure service or what kind of versions they are using. So I have to figure out the actual operating system, the actual services which are running behind this. So let's change our Nmap command here. Let's go ahead and change this. Again, we are going to do a stealth scan, but with stealth scan, now I'm going to pass in a stealth version. So now Nmap is going to figure out the version of each service which is coming in here. Apart from this, I'm going to pass that I also want to know about the operating system. So let's try to search for the operating system too, and then give again the IP address. So 192.168.56.103. So let's run this now. So this is mainly related to that. I'm trying to see that whether some kind of vulnerability is available on this services or not, because you know that some of the services are vulnerable. If I am using SSL 3.0, then it's known vulnerable because you have a heartbleed kind of problem with this. Similarly, if I'm using FTP, a version of 2.3.4, again that's vulnerable. That's also a known kind of vulnerability which is present with the system. So these are vulnerable. So that's why I'm trying to figure out whether the versions of these services are in that range or not. So if you see the results here for my command, so I'm able to get the port, I'm getting the state, I'm getting the service, and I'm also getting the version of those services. So I'm able to see that this is running VHFTPD, this is running OpenSSH, this is running Netkid, this is running Pro, this is running MySQL 5.0.51. Apart from this, I'm also able to figure out the version of the server itself. I'm able to see that this server is actually running Linux, which is based on Oracle VirtualBox, and this is using Linux kernel 2.6 as a shell, and it has lot many informations associated with it. So just by scanning across, I'm able to figure out all those kind of things under a service. Till now, what we have done, we started with just the information gathering. We figured out what is the IP range of the services. Then we go into the second method, which is related to scanning. Scanning is mainly figuring out, the first thing we did was figure out which servers or IP addresses are available. Then after figuring this out, we went in to figure out the ports which are open on the server. Then after this, we try to figure out the services each port is running. So these three steps I have done. Finally, I'm going to do the exploitation now. So I know that these are the different things which are running here, and I'm able to see that there is this port number 21 which is running a FTP service. So let's try to hack it. Let's try to log in into the system. Now this FTP which is used here, this is a known vulnerability. So I already know one thing with this, that this, so I already know that if the person has not configured his own username and password, that means he is using a default username and password, and I can directly use the default username and password to use it. So let's try to use the first default username and password, whether this is a security misconfiguration or not. So let's try that out. Let's do a FTP here, run this IP address 192.168.56.103. So it's going to ask me for a name. So the default username and password for the FTP is anonymous. Just type in anonymous, and the password is blank. So if the person, if the security or the server administrator has configured the default FTP, so what is going to happen? So password blank. So you see here, I'm able to actually log in into the system. Now I am able to log in into the system. I would be actually able to delete their files or update their system or change multiple things into the system. So they are using default username and password. So that's the first thing I have figured out as an ethical hacker, that they are using default username and password. They should not do that. So I will just report that down and give it to the organization. Let's do one more thing with this. Let's just exit this. Let's try one more thing with this. You might have heard about a tool which is known as Hydra. Hydra is a very good tool for scanning and doing brute force attack. What is a brute force attack? Brute force attack is an attack where I'm going to try combination of different usernames and password and try to attack the system with the same. So what I'm going to do, I know that there are some default usernames and password. It could be that I have done a social engineering attack on the business and tried to figure out what are the different usernames and passwords for the business, or it could be related to that I'm just going here and doing a password list kind of thing. So if you just Google search it, you will also get it, brute force password list. So you will get some of the commonly used passwords. So they have a 10 million password list here. So you can also use such kind of thing. So here what I have done, I have created two text files. One is a user text file. So I did a social engineering attack on the person or the business, tried to build up what are the different users they can use. So you can see that we have admin, support, user, MSF admin, service, PostGRES, super admin. So just different users listed under this file. Next, I have created a passwords file. So this is again the common passwords they might have used: admin, support, user, MSF admin, service, PostGRES, SQL, and super admin. So again the common passwords they might use. Let's try to do a brute force attack on the FTP which we have here. So we have figured out this FTP is vulnerable. So we are trying to do some kind of attacks and trying to exploit that. So I'm going to use the users file and password file here. So let's just pass the user file here. The syntax for the same is that use -l, then start with the root, go to the desktop. Under desktop I have users.txt. Now I will use the password file here, use the password file, go to the root, find the desktop, then I will use the pass.txt here. Now I have to pass in the IP address where I'm trying to do the brute force attack. So I'm trying to do the brute force attack over 192.168.56.103, and the service on which I'm trying to do the brute force attack, FTP. Once I have done this, I will also pass a -v flag, which is mainly related to that I need to see the information what you are doing back there. So let's try to run this now. click enter. So now it's trying to run the brute force attack on the system. Hydra is a very powerful tool which does that. So you see, after running the brute force attack, what has happened, he is actually giving me all the usernames and passwords which are able to log in into the FTP. So user, MSF admin, service, PostGRS, all these combinations of username and passwords are able to actually log in into the system. So let's try with any one of those. So let's do FTP 192.168.56.103 and then pass in user name and user as the password, and you see again I am able to log in into the system. So different methods on how I have exploited the system, and once I have exploited the system, now I can go ahead and delete their files, update their files, change anything. So as an ethical hacker, it's your job to figure out that how this whole process worked, how you exploited the server, what are the different things you have carried out to exploit the server, and what are the mitigation techniques of this. What is happening here, the person, the security administrator is using a default user, so I'm able to exploit using the default user. Second thing which is happening here, I'm able to run a brute force attack, so the servers should be safeguarded from the brute force attack. How to safeguard from that? A very common way which you have seen under internet banking also, that after 3 tries the server will lock. So here also do something like this, after 3 tries lock the server, or actually use some kind of combinations of usernames and passwords. Don't directly use the common usernames and passwords. So all these things I can just formulate a report and provide it to the business that these are the different things I have figured out, so you should protect your system with that. So that's the main purpose and main goal of how an ethical hacker is going to work with the system. So now ethical hacking across domains. So this demonstration which I just showcased you, this was more on the network side because I'm trying to actually hack the server. But ethical hacking actually different roles under different kinds of verticals. So if you talk about web application, there would be some other kinds of attacks which I'm trying to exploit. These could be related to SQL injection or some kind of other CSS attack, CSRF attack. It could be related to that I'm trying to do some kind of encoding or encryption, or those kind of things could be there with the web application where I'm trying to figure out your username or password or trying to hack your databases. Then we have network architecture, which I just showcased you one small example. This is just the tip of the things. If you go deep into the network architecture, you will learn many more tools and how to completely do that process. Then we have mobile applications. Mobile applications also has a very big concepts for ethical hackers, because currently most of the people are using mobile devices to actually access much of their business and services, and it's just part of the complete role for ethical hacking to make sure that the mobile devices are also protected. So throughout the course of ethical hacking, these are going to be the some of the verticals which you will be facing and seeing that how the whole process works, and this will be a very good way to learn the whole concept of ethical hacking.